This is Optimal Relationships Daily, episode 1122. Best Strategies to Help You Deal with Someone Who Plays the Victim, Part 1, by Sabrina of thebuddingoptimist.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am your host and narrator, Greg Audino, and this is where I read to you from some of the best blogs and books that teach us about the many facets of relationships. It's a great show for learning about how to interact with others, and today we'll be learning about how to interact specifically with those who feel as though they are victims of some kind. How can we empathize with them, help them, and still look after ourselves? We'll learn between today and tomorrow, as this is a long post and I'll be splitting it up over 2 episodes. So with that, let's start it off on part 1 and optimize your life. Best Strategies to Help You Deal with Someone Who Plays the Victim, Part 1, by Sabrina of thebuddingoptimist.com. "You're out to get me. I just know it," the man said. I could sense his anxiety intensifying with each syllable. Even though I couldn't see his face on the other side of the telephone, I could tell he had angry, hot tears rolling in his eyes. I let out a silent sigh. Here we go again. The thought rammed through my mind and almost slipped through my teeth. Thankfully, I caught it just in time. I put on my best professional voice and explained to him, for what felt like the zillionth time, that there was no stealthy agenda, no evil plot, no cunning conspiracy of any kind going on here. His manager had given him a written warning for a mistake that shouldn't have been made by someone with his experience and training. As a member of Human Resources, I had personally reviewed the decision and agreed it was appropriate under the circumstances. He needed to take accountability and learn from his mistakes. End of story. But would he listen? No. The belief that he had been the victim of a wicked, unjust, and shameful ploy against him was already deeply entrenched in his mind, and there was no way to dig it out. Just like the last time he made a similar mistake at work, and the time before, there were always plenty of reasons why it was not his fault, and we were the bad guys for not accepting his perfectly reasonable rationale. A few weeks later, he resigned. But before he left, he made sure everyone in the office knew how he was bullied by the company and driven out. I assume by the fact that you're hearing these words that you know someone like this, or a close version of it in your life. Perhaps it's a coworker, maybe it's a friend, or worse, someone you have to live with, and you don't know what to do with them. For them, life is always unfair and people unkind. Just listening to them makes you feel drained and exasperated, and even worse, they can make you feel guilty and lead you to question your own perception of reality. There's a name to this kind of behavior. It's called the victim syndrome, or victim mentality, and it's a real bummer. What is the victim syndrome or victim mentality? Victim syndrome or victim mentality are terms used to describe people who feel victimized all the time, even though most of their complaints are about trivial things. People with a victim mentality project a sense of helplessness and vulnerability. They often tell negative stories about themselves and use their experiences to arouse pity in others and seek validation for their suffering. People with this mentality also tend to have ongoing struggles in their social realm, as they like to view themselves as a victim across different kinds of interpersonal relationships. What are the signs of victim mentality? Not sure how to tell if a person has a victim mentality? Besides the traits I mentioned, also look for the following signs. They never admit their own shortcomings or recognize the role they play in a conflict. They like to exaggerate their negative experiences and feelings. Every little problem is the end of the world. They think that everybody, or almost everybody, is mean to them in some way. They believe they're helpless and have little control over their life. Their conversations usually revolve around their problems. They show little to no interest in listening to others. They seem to attract drama and misfortune wherever they go, and they lack self-confidence and like to think of themselves as being at a disadvantage compared to others. I've seen my fair share of people with these traits of victim mentality in both my personal and professional life, and I know how difficult it can be to work, live, socialize with them. They can easily suck you in, dampen your mood, and deplete your energy with their constant negativity. But the good news is, you don't have to let them. How do you deal with someone who plays the victim? 5 best strategies. Number 1. Help them look at the situation from another perspective. People who have a victim mentality often look at things from a narrow perspective. Take, for example, my story of that disgruntled employee who believed a well-intended corrective action harbored a sinister motive. They tend to focus on only one perspective of the situation, and it's usually a negative perspective, and forget that there could be another way of perceiving and interpreting the event. Even when there's a more logical and more positive explanation for what's happening, people with a victim mentality tend to default to the negative perspective, the view that others are intentionally trying to hurt them. The more they dwell on this negative perspective, the more resentful they feel, and the more they tell others, like you, about it, reliving the perceived negative experience over and over each time they recount the narrative. And in turn, they build up even more resentment. It's a vicious cycle. To help them break this cycle, you need to remind them that there are usually several sides to every story. Show them there's another angle to look at things when they're stuck in their tunnel vision. Here's an example. When someone with a victim mentality says, "So-and-so from accounting was standoffish when I asked her about my expenses today. She must not like me," you could say, "She probably had a bad day." We all have days when we feel irritated, and it's likely got nothing to do with you. To be continued. You just listened to part 1 of the post titled, "Best Strategies to Help You Deal with Someone Who Plays the Victim," by Sabrina of thebuddingoptimist.com. Okay, friends, I love where this article is going, and it sounds like we're really just getting into the meat of it now. There will be a lot more tomorrow, so I'm going to save my commentary for then once we've finished up and let you out of school a little early today. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining, and do be sure to come on back tomorrow to hear the rest and where your optimal life awaits.